Want to play chess online or learn how to improve? Join us at the #1 chess destination in the world, chess.com. With hundreds of thousands of people playing at any moment, you'll quickly find a game with someone at your level, whether you're a total beginner or a grandmaster. You can play games at any pace against friends, other members, or one of our many computer personalities. Chess.com makes improving fun and easy. Sharpen your game with tactics puzzles and enhance your strategy with our videos and lessons by top masters. Learn from your own games with Chess.com's easy-to-use analysis tool. Regardless of your skill level, Chess.com has all you need to take your game to the next level. Chess.com is your go-to source for chess news, live coverage of tournaments, events, and everything in between. Experience Chess.com anytime and anywhere, whether you're at home on your computer or on the go with our mobile apps. Signing up is free and easy, so what are you waiting for? Join Chess.com today.
Welcome everyone at FIDE Grand Prix 2022 Leg 1. This is finals, and I'm honored to present my co-host here, Dania Naroditsky. Welcome, Dania.
Hi, Ketty. Good morning, good afternoon to everybody. This is going to be epic. I love the finals of any tournament, but there's so much on the line here. Yesterday was such a topsy-turvy game, Ketty, and I can't wait to jump into today's game as well.
It was a quite tense game, starting from the opening until the end game. And if we see something like that today too, this means that the match will be tied and we're gonna get to the tie breaks tomorrow. But we don't see if we do have here decisive results. That will be the over of the tournament. And those two players are playing for the Grand Prix points. They would like to collect as much Grand Prix points as possible, because in the end, only two winners of the Grand Prix series will get the final two spots at the Candidates Tournament 2022. And Dania, the winner will get 13 Grand Prix points and the runner-up will get 10. Those two players, Hikaru Nakamura and Levon Aronian, already guaranteed at least 10 Grand Prix points. But now we're talking about the prize that we do have in this tournament. And Dania, what do we have here for the winner?
24,000 euros. And there's a 6,000 euro difference between winner and runner-up. You can get a lot of good stuff for 6,000 euros. Now, that's not all that they're thinking about. I would venture to say, thinking more about the 3 Grand Prix points than about 6,000 euros. But that just adds to the tension. And so does the time control. The time control is, I think, very conducive to good play. It's not too long. It's 90 for 40 moves, 30 minutes for the rest of the game, and 30-second increment starting from move 1. I think some people in the chat were confused. The 30-second increment lasts the entire game, even after move 40. So it avoids the craziest of time scrambles, but it's a traditional and proven time control. And I think it sets the tone perfectly. As George Washington said when he was leading his troops over the Delaware River, there's nothing like a Nakamura Aronian match. And this has been super fun yesterday, and I think it's going to be another really fun day today.
Wow, what a quote from the history. That's really nice. That's really nice to bring that to the wide audience here who never heard of it, but now they heard it. Dania, we had such a tense game yesterday, and today they switched the colors. What are your predictions? What we're gonna have today? D4, E4, or C4? Those are 3 main lines as Aronian used to play against Hikaru Nakamura.
Aronian's a big C4 guy. I think traditionally, when you're trying to play for a win now, the top guys like to go C4. They like to go English, and there's a lot of reasons for that I can get into if he plays it. Now, as we discussed yesterday, I think Hikaru is the quote-unquote winner in the event of a draw. He's the better rapid player. There's no question about it. Levon had chances yesterday. There was no forced win or anything of the sort. And then, by the end, the tables had turned, and Hikaru was the one who had Levon on the ropes, but excellent defense at the end of the game by Aronian. So I don't think you can really talk of momentum heading into this game. I think Levon is just happy to have the white pieces. He's happy to have a crack at an opening advantage. And it's going to be very important for Levon to set the tone with good opening play. That's what he's been doing the whole tournament long. And Levon is basically unstoppable when he gets a good position out of the opening. So for Hikaru, it's going to be very important to display the finest opening preparation and essentially to avoid what happened yesterday. I think if he gets another dubious position out of the opening, he's going to be in a lot of danger. We'll see what happens.
We're going to see what happens. And our chat on Twitch and also YouTube can feel free to predict the result of today. We do have 3 results. And Dania, there is also a way to predict some of the moves and the results on chess.com, right?
Yes, there is. And that is called voting. Make sure to go to chess.com/events. Click, you know the drill, click vote. Vote on the results of today's game and do not procrastinate while doing so, because voting ends on the 10th move. You'll be eligible for prizes. All it takes is one button. Just click who you think is going to win. Make sure to jump in, vote before the 10th move.
Yep, I have already done that, to be honest.
Yeah, me too. But I will not share the results of my vote. It would be impolite of me.
Yeah, that's right. So we're taking a very, very short break and coming right before the first move of this game. So don't go anywhere. And here we are at right before the first move of maybe the last game of the first leg of the Grand Prix, Dania. We don't know it yet. It can be the last one. It can be one of the last of these games. But I bet they feel a lot of tense right now and a bit nervous too.
It's funny. I have a story about that. So for context, if this game ends in a draw, this is important. Tomorrow at the same time, there will be a rapid playoff, of course, just as there have been in the previous matches. Nothing changes because it's the final. And if the game ends in a draw, the playoff will be in the same format, 2 rapid games, 15 plus 10. If those end in 1-1, 2 blitz games. And if that goes 1-1, an Armageddon game. So the format is exactly the same. But as Levon makes his first move, getting, and it is 1-4 very quickly, I remember that at the last round of the US Championship one year, I was playing Wesley, and I was white, and I knew that Wesley guaranteed at least a tie for first place with a draw. He was over 2,800 at the time. I was praying that he would play the Berlin. You know why? Because then I could make a forced draw, but and gain some rating. And this is the last round. Drawing Wesley in the last round, good result. But I knew I was on camera, and I knew that on camera I had to look very disappointed because, oh man, Wesley played the Berlin. That means I can't really play. I have to make a draw. Darn it! So I was frowning and making all sorts of faces. Of course, inside I was so happy that I could make a forced draw. It was funny, and of course I made it.
Did you play it well?
Italian? Yeah. I made the Queen E4 draw.
Yeah, but did you play well in front of camera?
Oh, did I play my role? Well, yeah. I know. I think I did. I'm good at. Oh man, this is such a disappointment. I was hoping for a combative Sicilian, but instead Wesley, of course, he had to play the Berlin, and you had to force the 4,2600 to make a draw against him. Okay, so no Najdorf, no 1c4. I was wrong. Instead, we have another Italian.
Italiano. That's interesting, Dania. The opening choices sometimes says a lot, right, about the players. Like they are going to play a little bit slow. They want to make a draw. Some side wants to fight. Does this opening tells you anything?
Not yet. I mean, give me I think the Italian is such a vast opening. It can take so many different routes. Now it does tell me that Aronian wants to be on the solid side, because this is actually a very important thing to understand. Just because Aronian played 1e4 doesn't mean that he doesn't want to play solid chess. In fact, my coach used to say that 1e4, if you want to make a draw with white, the best way to do that is not 1d4, but 1e4, because 1e4 is a lot more forcing, and it's a lot more well-studied in the grand scheme of things. So the Italian nowadays is considered to be one of the most solid openings that white can choose, one of the most risk-free if white follows the sort of main lines. But if white branches out and plays something more risky, more interesting, like a4 and b4, that would mean that Levon is ready to take on a little bit more risk.
Right. Dania, I was just following their previous games because they have played hundreds, if not more, games, classic, blitz, rapid, all of this. And I can see that they were following their own game, which was played some years ago on chess.com. It was a blitz. And after a4, this is move 7, in the game, it was played castle, but now we have bishop a7. However, this can go to this position, which already happened. Like now after bishop a7, white can play bishop g5, and h6, bishop h4, and g5 was played. So this structure was played here by Nakamura.
And that's a big question for white. How do you even catalog the variations that are available to white? Because Italian is so expansive, and there's a dividing line between lines that involve bishop g5 and lines that involve bishop e3. Both bishop placements are viable, and Levon playing a different move, delaying the decision by playing knight a3. And often the knight goes either backward to c2 in order to prepare d4, or the knight just sort of chills out on a3 and perhaps later can go out to c4 once the bishop drops back. So knight on a3 is not too uncommon in these types of positions. And I see that this move has been played more than a handful of times as well.
Right. Yeah, that move was also played in their earliest game, but in that game was bishop g5, and I don't think now White is going to play bishop g5 anymore. I like this bishop e3 idea more here for White.
Yeah, I still think bishop g5 is a possibility. You know how I've seen people play this recently? Bishop g5, black will play knight g6. And the point of putting the knight on g6, and Ketty, I think this is the reason you're skeptical about bishop g5, is that when black plays h6 now, you won't really be able to go back to h4. You're essentially either going to have to waste the tempo by dropping the bishop back, or you're going to have to trade. And traditionally, this trade favors black. I mean, that should be pretty obvious. The bishop is coming to g4, knight is coming to f4. This is no fun. One could get checkmated here pretty quickly. So I agree. I think knight c2 is what we're going to see. And yes, knight c2 has been played. Hikaru is likely to complete the maneuver with knight g6. And then Levon might go bishop e3, or he might go knight e3. We'll see. Yep, there's knight g6. It's on the board. The player's wasting no time. And let's see what
they're
Levon
playing
plays.
really fast. Danny, what's the idea of delay here, castle for black, and first to start maneuvering with a knight? Because we have seen games usually black castles first, and then we have this knight e7, knight g6.
Well, I mean, the problem is that if you castle here, you could be late for the flight after bishop g5. You know, the airplane has taken off, and now if you go knight e7, you allow the possibility of bishop takes f6. But yeah, in terms of why, right? So, and it's not that that's bad. I mean, that is its own lines, and there's a million lines that involve the knight sacrifice on g5. Extremely well studied idea. So that's a whole different, you know, as they say in Russian, it's a whole different opera. That's an expression. But here, Hikaru is not a fan of, you know, these crazy opening systems. He likes to play more solid. And Ketty, you were right. Bishop comes out to e3. Hikaru immediately takes it. And I would imagine that Levon takes back with a knight. Otherwise, why did you put a knight on c2 if not to take on e3? And yeah, he takes with a knight. And they're probably still, yeah, they're still following a bunch of games. Just shows you how well studied the Italian is now.
Oh yeah, there are lots of games in here. Daniel, do you think White captured these knights e3 because if White opens the f file for the rook, then knight on c2 has not much of the space?
Yeah, I mean, the knight is basically saying, well, what about me? I mean, you just made me work all this way, knight a3, knight c2, and now you're blocking my passageway to the king side. Come on, you're not cool. And the knight has no prospects here. Literally, knight b4 can be met with c6. So this would not be consecutive. You know, this wouldn't be a good way to play. Now here, you know, the way I learned the Italian, we're supposed to prepare d3, d4 at some point. So I see that the move queen c2 has been played a couple of times. But in recent times, people have also been playing more on the queen side, you know, b4, queen b3, that kind of stuff, which I don't really fully understand. But Levon is taking a little bit of time here. He hasn't made a move yet, although I'm sure he's still in his preparation. Positive.
Right. I see here 4 moves, including queen c2, which probably prepares d4 as e4 pawn will no longer hang in. There's rook e2 also with the same idea, knight f3, knight g3, and this pawn is not hanging. And very interesting idea, a5 to get more space advantage on the queen side.
Yep, a5 is a great move to start with. It's very flexible, and it probably won't hurt to play it. And from Hikaru's perspective, he also has the same decision to make. I mean, does he play bishop e6? Or does he play knight f4 first and then bishop e6? Of course, the position could end up being very, very symmetrical if black plays knight f4 and then bishop e6 and then trades and recaptures with the knight. You might have a pretty rare situation where both pairs of bishops have been traded and you just have 4 knights on the board. That doesn't happen every day if you think about it.
True.
So we'll see what Levon does here. I mean, I like the look of queen c2. By the way, the idea of queen c2 is that when you play d4, the pawn on e4 is going to be protected. You can't really play d4 immediately because you drop the pawn. But he is actually thinking here. And, it's funny, Ketty, how much the Italian fashion has changed. Well, I'm sure clothing fashion in Italy has changed. I'm talking about the role of the Italian in top level chess. In 2016, I got into a fight, not a fight, but an argument. I was playing the World Team Championship in Armenia for Team US, and we were playing Russia. Big match, right? So I'm playing on board 4 against Dmitry Yakovenko, who was at that time about 2750. And I was consulting with our team coach, Gregory Kaidanov. And Kaidanov was also my childhood private coach. So I wanted to play the Ruy Lopez, which was at that point my main opening. I was deciding between going 1d4 and the Ruy Lopez. And I go into Kaidanov's hotel room. He says, Daniel, you're playing the Italian. What do you mean I'm playing? No, I'm not. What are you saying? I have not played the Italian since I was 1600. You want me to play the Italian against a 2750? You're playing the Italian. I looked at Dimitri's games. He doesn't play well against the Italian. You're playing the Italian. No, I'm not playing it. You don't get to tell me what I play. You haven't been my coach
this is getting interesting.
So Gregory says, okay, you want to be stubborn? Go play the Ruy Lopez. Go to your hotel room, check for yourself. Slam the door. I checked Yakovenko's games. What do I play? I play the Italian, of course. And I ended up winning the game. This was my first win over a super GM. And
nice.
Gregory just gave me the smirk and the smile afterward, but he was happy for me. And we lived happily ever after.
That's the happy end. But I'm sure he felt really proud of himself.
Oh yeah,
for that decision.
And the last thing I just wanted to say is in 2016, that was back before the Italian was like quite as popular at the top level as it is now. So, saying that, that you're playing the Italian is like, wearing a t-shirt to a fancy restaurant or something. It's an act of rebellion. Wow. Bishop C4, not Ruy Lopez. Now, of course, it wouldn't be the same.
Right. Yeah. And it's so interesting to see this chess opening coming back in fashion with the different vision of the chess engines that they brought. And now people are starting to play these openings again. Yeah, because I also remember when I started to play chess, I started with e4 and really quickly switched to d4 because that was very modern thing and everybody was playing d4. And then I stopped there and I never switched back to e4. My passion just ended there. And now we do have all this game, people are switching back to e4. But Daniel, what we can clearly see now, these top guys, these elite chess players, they play equally good e4, d4, c4, knight f3, and even other lines.
Right, as they say in Russian, I don't think this is an expression in English, but you basically say they play with both hands. Like to play with the left hand is to play d4. If you think about it, it's on the queen side. To play with the right hand is to play e4. So the expression is, saboy ruk. They play with both hands. And and the reason that is, obviously part of it is because of the insanely vast amount of theory that has to be processed. You just can't be someone who plays the same opening game after game. I mean, they're going to be a sitting duck. And only a select few grandmasters have managed to do that, MVL being the most famous case. And even he has had his major struggles recently with the Najdorf, in the Grunfeld, he is starting to diversify. And there are a couple of GMs at the slightly lower tier, high 2600s. Alexander Oreshenko comes to mind, Ukrainian grandmaster. He's played the Najdorf his whole life, and he's played nothing but the Najdorf. Very, very hard to do that nowadays. So it's becoming increasingly untenable to do that. You have to diversify.
Yes. The group of the team of your opponents and together with the engine can find a hole in your preparation and in your opening, and that's it. You're done there. So it's always good to have some backup openings, and that's a huge amount of work that these guys are doing, and they're committing themselves to chess.
I don't even know what to compare it to. I don't know what to compare this expansion of people's repertoires to. I mean, I love finding comparisons to other sports and the ways that other sports have evolved. I think one could make a comparison to basketball. I'm a huge basketball fan. I love reading about how the game of basketball has changed. And, those people in the chat who watch basketball will know that the 3-point shot, right? The long distance shot, which first appeared in the NBA in 1979. But when it first appeared, right, the 3-pointer back before 1979, every shot was worth 2 points. In 79, they introduced the 3-point line, and everybody laughs it out of the room. Nobody's going to shoot the basketball from that distance. Ridiculous, right? Nobody's going to make a shot from 30 feet. Now you have players like Stephen Curry, and teams take 40 3-pointers per game. So this is what's interesting about things. The reason I even bring that up is just because it used to be the case that certain basketball players would have a very clear style. They would either be inside trying to make layups, or they would be shooters. But now basketball players have diversified, and almost every player can do everything, right? They can shoot 3-pointers. Even the tall guys, even the big guys who didn't used to shoot at all, even they have started to shoot threes. So, you just have this, I don't know what to call it, universalization of styles. Yeah. Everything is more, you have to be able to do everything now, whatever the sport.
Yeah. That's very close. By the way, we have A5 in the game, Dania. By the way, in chess, we also have this universal style, which was introduced later than earlier. We had some dynamic players, we had some positional players, and all these classical chess players and the world champions. And nowadays, all this modern chess goes the way that the player who has the universal style wins big time. And it's always good to work on the both dynamic and the strategical skills of yours.
Right. And you just don't have the same, clear pigeonholing. Oh, Mikhail Tal was this kind of player. Smyslov was this kind of player. Botvinnik was this kind of player. Everybody has, people have tendencies, everybody has preferences, obviously, because they're human. Well, in the case of people like Magnus and Aronian and Hikaru, only partially. But nonetheless, you know what I mean. So in the meantime, A5 was met with C6, which Hikaru says, I'm joining the D5 party, preparing D5, and Aronian steps back with his bishop. The drawback of the move C6, of course, is that it creates a pretty big hole on B6. And it's not out of the question that White tries to exploit that by transitioning the knight to C4 and then to B6. So for Hikaru, he has a big decision to make, Ketty, which is, does he play a D5 here? Does he take the plunge?
Yeah, that's a so good looking move to control the center. But how about White takes that pawn? It takes D5, knight, he takes D5 and then to push D4. And first Black to fix the center. Black very likely has to push E4 and now knight D2 or even knight D5, more active, because you cannot take this knight on E5 as D5 pawn is hanging. And now White can have some ideas to explode this center with F3 with it. That's quite typical. Also C4 is right.
Yeah. This looks very impressive for Black, but if you think about it, as you said, Ketty, C4 is possible. You can attack the base of the pawn chain. You can attack the foot of the pawn chain with F3, and both moves give your pieces a lot more life. For instance, let's say bishop E6. Let's say White plays F3. The point is that this pawn is a pretty big weakness. Black kind of has to take it. And once you take with a knight, your knights have a lot of prospects, and Black is kind of left with an isolated and relatively weak pawn on T5. So absolutely, that is a way that the game could unfold, and something that Hikaru has to consider very seriously if he's going to play D5, because he could also take with a knight. But this I don't like quite as much, because now White can play knight C4. Okay, the Eval bar hated that move, but that's just one of several possibilities.
Right. You can also switch to the same variation, just trade the knights and then push D4. Obviously, D5 is the first candidate move, and if Black dislikes that move, is bishop E6 next Black's next move, or is it?
Yeah, bishop E6. I agree. I think this is a candidate move. Now, often the way White meets that, what concerns me is this pawn on B7. It's being fixed by the pawn on A5. It's not just the B6 square; it's the pawn that's behind it as well, quite weak. And White has several ways to exploit that. Queen B3, comes to mind, forcing black to defend both of these pawns, which of course black can do. But let's say you play queen d7. Now, boom, knight c4. Now the knight coming into b6, you have to move the rook. And white can even lift the rook up through a4 to b4 and start attacking b7. These are very serious threats. Black can't laugh this off.
I like this rook maneuvering here on the b file. And the b6 is a real hole here for black.
It really is. Yeah, it is. And it's, it's not to suggest that knight b6 is the scariest thing in the world, but it's, you have to factor that into whatever you do. And knight b6 could come at the most inconvenient moment for black. So, no, bishop b6 is definitely a candidate move as well. And black can also play a more neutral move. Black can play knight f4. Although one would ask, what exactly this move accomplishes. I mean, it just improves the position of the knight. And, white can play g3 here and chase the knight away, but black would be quite happy to induce this weakening of white's kingside, even if black just goes back to g6. That is not out of the question. This is the Italian, right? It's not like anything huge is happening. And so the players often, they poke and they prod and they induce weaknesses. And sometimes they go to a square, then go all the way back. And they say, okay, now I have the h3 square for my bishop. So several different approaches for Hikaru. I don't think there's a clear best move. And there we go, h6, right? He just says, I'm going to improve my position. Come at me, Lev.
Yeah. I wanted to suggest Hikaru's favorite maneuvering here, starting with h6, knight h7, knight g5. And then
absolutely.
I started to like this idea even after g3, because g3 causes a bit of weaknesses on the king side, these light squares. And then knight h7, knight g5 comes with all the serious threats. Yeah,
white certainly cannot fall asleep on the king side, because we know what can happen there. Yeah, Levon now with the ball back in his court, essentially. I mean, he's gone bishop b3. Will he follow through with knight c4? I think what Hikaru is saying is that I'm not afraid of what you can do to me on the queen side. One idea that came to my mind here for black is to go bishop g4. And if white plays h3, you actually play bishop h5. Does that blunder a bishop? Well, I suppose it depends how you look at it. But I thought that the sacrifice gives black very, very nice play, because the knight is coming out to h4, queen coming to f6. This is not up Aronian's alley at all.
Not at all. King h8, just like Aronian played with the idea of f5.
Right, f5.
Yesterday. That's really scary. I'm sure Aronian don't really want to have this position at the final game. And Daniel, the moment knight leaves e3 square, this allows black to get bishop on g4. And in this situation, if black doesn't want to give up the piece for 2 pawns, even after h3, knight f4 comes with all the comfort, as white can never kick this knight back with g3, as the pawn on h3 will be hanging, right?
That's a great point. Yeah, just going bishop g4, h3, and going back is very possible as well, and then following up with knight f4. As you said, the fact that white lacks a dark squared bishop creates this asymmetry between the f5 and f4 squares. Black can always take a knight that appears on f5 as long as he's got the light squared bishop, but white can't do the same thing. White has a responsibility to protect that f4 square and not allow a knight to jump into f4 in the bad set of circumstances for white. That could be very unpleasant. So big moment for Levon. I mean, again, he has the same choice of different approaches that Hikaru had. He can do something more concrete, right? He can play bishop c2, for example, to prepare d4, or he can do something more open-ended. He can play rook e1, for example, just improving his position more slowly. And still, ultimately, I think white's plan is to prepare d4. I think that is the traditional idea in such positions.
Yeah, that looks really good for white to control the center. Will black go against this idea, for instance, with queen 7 or rook e8, just to avoid any further d4, as the pawn on e4 will be hanging?
Yeah, definitely. And by the way, we had a question, why is d4 impossible now? Because it hangs the e4 pawn. And by the way, this can be considered for white. I don't think this is entirely out of the question. I had this idea here of going queen c2 and trying to exploit h6. If you move your knight back, queen takes g6, picks up the knight on g6. So black essentially has to defend the knight. And now white can take on e5, takes, with a very complex position. I'm not sure who this favors exactly, but I don't think black is suffering here at all after something like bishop e6. But no, it's possible. And Levon, he went bishop c2. So he prepares d4 more directly. And definitely rook e8 should be considered here by Hikaru to prevent.
Oh, Dania, you know why he did not play d4 and he played first bishop c2 just to guarantee himself that e4 pawn is not hanging. After d4, black can play e takes d4 first, c takes d4, and then to take it. And in the same lines, e5 is no longer on the board, and you don't really worry about that.
Right, because d5 just wins the pawn. Although I would argue that here white can take with a queen, but it's still a little bit uncomfortable after rook e8.
Knight f4 looks also quite tempting.
Yeah, knight f. Whoops, no, not knight takes e4, but knight f4 threatens knight e2 with a fork, and white has a hard time defending the pawn on e4. So this is not exactly perfect for white. Okay, so bishop c2, and now tossing the ball right back into Hikaru's court. Okay.
Yeah, and at this point, bishop c2 seems to be the move that has not played. I can see that after h6 there was move rook e8 and we had rook e1 and we had a bunch of games there too. But bishop c2 has never been played before.
Okay, so that's the novelty of the year. Bishop c2 by Levon against Hikaru. But in all seriousness, it does force black to make a decision. And Hikaru has the exact same decision he had on the previous move. Does he play d5? Right. And here I definitely think Levon is planning to capture and follow your idea, Ketty. d4, e4, and now either knight e5 or knight d2. And Hikaru has already made his decision, and it is rook e8. Yeah, not a surprise at all. Not a surprise there.
Yeah, he's going against d4, so he's keeping the increasing the tension on e file. So after every d4 move, black will consider to take that pawn and then to take on e4.
Right, and I think that if you want to be sort of an informed consumer of Italian games, I think it's important to understand that there is a lot of tension that hides behind what seems to be a very symmetrical structure. It doesn't seem like there's much going on here, right? They're just making simple improving moves, but in fact, both players are extremely on edge, right? It's a escalating tensions in the center, to borrow a frequent news term. White can play d4 at any moment, black can play d5 at any moment, and both players are sort of nervously preparing for the moment that one of them breaks the ice. White can still play d4, by the way. And as we discussed, e takes d4, queen takes d4 is a possibility, but not terribly appetizing in my opinion, just because knight f4 is possible, knight e5 also, and this is a completely different, even c5 here should be considered. Pushing the queen back to, well, where does it even go? I think this almost wins a pawn. Because if you go to d3, you still allow black to take on e4.
Knight f4 comes with all the pleasure there.
yeah, knight f4, boom. Yeah, pushing the queen back even further, and then you're going to take on e4, and the dominoes start to fall. So rook e1, rook e1 comes to mind. At
this point, yeah. I really love this idea of yours, rook a4, rook b4. How about to play rook a4 here, with either to play d4 next move? If black takes e takes d4, you take with the rook, you guard d4, you attack d6. How fancy is that?
That is spicy. I don't dislike that, but there is a logistical problem, Ketty, with that, I think. Which is that if, for example, I play bishop e6 here, just for the sake of illustration, I'm not saying that's what black's going to do. So here, actually here I can already take with a knight, but if you take with a rook, you have to be careful about the a pawn. And in some positions, black can capture it, although you can capture back on d6. And I think here specifically, white is doing quite fine. But if bishop e6 is a very unfortunate move by me, because if the bishop is anywhere but e6, then the pawn on e4 would hang in this position and black could capture it with a knight. So this leads to very, very intense complications, but very much possible. Yeah, it has to be considered for sure. For sure.
Well, today is the day for Aronian that he's not showing us that he's in his preparation. He's spending way more time that he used to spend for last 3 games at the Grand Prix. he's not blitzing the moves anymore, and he's taken even more time there, Hikaru Nakamura.
Yeah, I mean, I'll put it this way. I'm not blown off my chair by his preparation this game. I'm not, my mouth is not agape. But that's how you play these days, right? It's not realistic to expect. Somebody might be saying, well, why is Levon not playing more ambitiously? Why is he going for this pretty, still in the grand scheme of things, it's a pretty dry position, even though there's a lot going on. And the answer is just that, against someone like Hikaru, you cannot expect to win the game out of the opening. That would be a dumb goal to set for yourself, quite frankly. And Levon just saying, okay, look, I'm going to go for a tense position. I'm going to guarantee that there's at least going to be a lot of fight and a lot of play, and let the better player win. And that's a totally valid opening approach. And by the way, here, before we go on our first break, I just want to mention that D5 is now, I would say, a very, very likely possibility, because Keti after takes D4, White can no longer play knight E5. That loses a pawn. And we discussed that the position after knight D2 is quite double-edged, but I don't think Black is worse here. So we'll see what decision Hikaru makes, I guess, on the other side of the break, right?
Yeah, we're taking now a very short break. We'll be back, so guys, don't go anywhere, because today we're gonna know who is the winner of the first leg of the Grand Prix. See you soon.
Did you know you can watch top chess events right on your phone? You don't even need to download an app. Just open any mobile browser and head to chess.com/events. You can see what's happening right now, check out top games, see results, and so much more. Try it for yourself at chess.com/events.
Welcome back. Please do not forget that the Rapid Chess Championship has already started. We are 1 weekend in, and it lived up to everything promised and more. There's a $650,000 prize fund in the Rapid Chess Championship presented by Coinbase. Previous weekend was the first one. It's going to be happening for months. There's going to be a Swiss on Saturday and then a knockout on Sunday. Keddy, I know that Saturday morning, Sunday morning is going to be a pretty boring time for a lot of people, but with the RCC, there is just no excuse to be bored any longer. Evening, of course, in Europe, the start time, 9 a.m. Pacific, 12 p.m. noon, New York time. So great start time. No excuses to miss it. It's the weekend.
Absolutely. I know my weekend plan. I'll order pizza and
yes,
I'll just chill on my sofa watching on big screen.
What's your
Dania
pizza
and Robert?
All right. What's your pizza order? Are you a pepperoni person? I hate tuna.
For me, our producer now is shouting tuna. It's his favorite, obviously. But for me, the most important is to have extra cheese, whatever pizza it is.
Extra cheese.
So whatever pizza with extra cheese, that's my preference.
Yeah, I don't really eat cheese on its own, but I love pizza. Mm-hmm. And for me, I would say I have a theory that, margarita. I mean, in the US, margarita is like the basic pizza with red sauce and cheese with nothing on it. I think the great test of whether a restaurant is good, a pizzeria is good, is whether they can make a good margarita pizza. Like if they can get the basics down, then I'll order something fancy from them. But if the margarita is bad, then the place is not worth its salt.
I like these tricks to check. That's very chess player mind, right? Like some people usually goes blindly and orders something, but no, first you have to see what's going on there.
You got to be able to. You have to have the positional understanding in order, and then you can sacrifice the queen. But I've been looking for a good pizza place here in Charlotte, where I live now, and it's hard to find one it's a pizza desert. Maybe that's a good thing. I'm not exactly, my body is not protesting the lack of pizza. So, and Hikaru is not protesting Levon's choice of opening here. He's gone Rook E1. And Nakamura, I think he had already played this before the break, right?
Yeah, and Black didn't really move his piece for like 10 minutes already. A little bit less than 10 minutes. Maybe the clocks are not the accurate. So he's taken his time. So we saw D5 was okay for Black.
Okay, D5 try to win the game, but okay, it's a complicated position. But okay, maybe D5, maybe delay D5. A very committal move. Yeah, so after takes, we were considering D4, E4, Knight D2, and then this position is not unlikely to occur. I would bet, a silver dollar that Hikaru is, I've been using that expression too much. I don't know what else Hikaru could bet, but I'm willing to bet that he's considering this position right now. That he's thinking about whether White's quote-unquote threats of F3 and C4 are something to be concerned about. The engine likes Knight F4 in this position, just advancing the knight to a more active square. And then after F3, the computer is saying that Black doesn't have to take on F3. Black can just ignore and develop the bishop to D7. And after F takes C4, Black takes back with a knight. The idea is to let the queen out to G5. So who let the dogs out? Who let the queen out to G5? And that assemblage of the queen and the knight can get real scary with that F pawn advancing to F5 as well. So it's a double-edged position.
And now it's the moment that Black has to make this decision. That's why he's taking his time and he's spending quite a lot of time on the clock, because if Black don't react right now in the center, White is coming with d4. White will get the control over the center, more space for its pieces. I know it's just easier when you have more space, obviously. So that's why he's taking his time.
Yeah, no, these are very committal decisions. And, and Black has a serious choice to make. I mean, you don't have to play d5. Although, to be completely honest, I think White is now ready to play d4. With the rook being on e1, that position with d4, e takes d4, queen takes d4, that seems to be a little bit more palatable for White now. And here's the thing. I don't really see what else Black can do. Like, I think Black has made most of the improving moves that he can make. And against Yesipenko, Hikaru had that Italian game against Andre, where he sort of played a little bit too passively. He let Andre play d4, and he got into a really passive situation. So I guess knight h7 is possible here. And after d4 knight g5, Hikaru kind of likes this maneuver. As you had indicated, he played it yesterday with the white pieces. But after something like knight takes g5, queen takes g5, g3, I'm just not really buying Black's kingside play. This pawn is doing a really good job of covering all of the squares. Black can go knight f4 here, but that runs into h4 with, serious concrete problems. So my guess would be d5. I think Hikaru will play d5.
I think he's considering this move d5 as well. Yeah, just now I'm looking at the game of Yesipenko and Hikaru, and it was a bit of different pawn structure. Black had the pawn on c7. We remember when Hikaru played c6, and he was very proud of that move. But very likely, if Black allows White to push d4 and then d5, we can have the very similar pawn structure there as it was in Yesipenko and Hikaru game in the playoffs. And I am sure that's the last thing Hikaru wants to repeat.
Yeah, no, absolutely. He's, it's very important to learn from your games. And the best thing is when you can learn from your game and then you haven't lost that game. Hikaru, of course, the game against Yesipenko was the game that catapulted him into the playoffs. And, those of you who watched the tournament will remember that Hikaru, with his back against the wall, an absolutely miraculous comeback in that game to hold a draw and qualify. I mean, that was just crazy. That game.
That was really, really crazy. Once again, we can suggest you to visit chess.com YouTube channel and take a look of the recaps of this tournament and also the other tournaments, because all these games, the important parts of the games are there, captured and well explained. So if you missed any of the days at this tournament, you can just take a look at the videos, and you can just have some image of the games, what happened before. Wow, he's taking really a lot of time, Danny, and this is the first time he's taking this much of time, down to 1 hour and 40 minutes. So it's basically he's thinking for like more than 10 minutes for this move. So this is really, really important moment for him.
Yeah, and I think some people in the chat are saying that d5 is the only way to preserve equality. I think that's totally reasonable because, as we discussed, White is basically ready to play d4. And, again, the opportunity train will pass if you don't play d5 here. But one can understand why Hikaru is taking this time, because you don't play such a move without being aware of the consequences and without being fully accountable for what happens. But if I had to predict, I'll say that we are very likely to have this position on the board. I'd say that there's over a 50% chance that this will happen.
Mm-hmm.
And then Aronian will basically pre-move f3. Pre-move in a classical game. That would be funny if you could do that.
Oh, you can do that, Tanya. I've tried once and my opponent said don't do it again.
You basically hold your hand on the clock so your opponent can't press it. That's like an old scholastic
No,
trick.
No, I'm not that nasty. No, of course not.
Right. No, but I'm not saying you would do such a thing, but I used to face kids who did that in like in my very first tournaments. You know, when you would get into time pressure, they would sort of hold their hand on the clock.
Yeah, the thing was that when my opponent castled, I castled too. So she castled and she wanted to press the clock, and I already had a castle. So the moment she pressed, I pressed, and she was like, "What are you doing?" And I was like, "What?"
I made a move.
What
are you doing? What are you doing? Yeah. Well, Nakamura is thinking. That's the problem with these Italian structures. I kind of played this up and I said there's a lot going on, and there is, but at the same time there isn't. Like the only thing to keep track of in this position is who is going to push their pawn in the center first. Everything else we've kind of fully discussed. And by the way, somebody was asking in the chat, why not c5? Trying to prevent d4. The problem with the move c5 is just that it creates a gaping hole on the d5 square. If you think about it, it creates these permanent weaknesses. White can still consider playing d4, but white can also get the bishop back to b3. And if you think about it, white can put a knight on d5, and such a committal move is really not. It's not terrible. I don't think c5 is a horrible move, but I don't see Hikaru making unnecessary weaknesses in the center.
Oh yeah, white can bring the pieces back, but black cannot take the pawn back. So this c5 move can cause the long-term weakness for black. And even in that position, d4 comes with all the power, then this sixth pawn will be completely weak and just alone there on the sixth rank. So moves like this should be really well prepared and well calculated rather than just to push right away.
Yeah, no, especially when the time control is rather generous. You want to err on the side of, of checking it too many times than not enough times. And I'm thinking, since Hikaru is taking a while on this move, perhaps we could quickly recap what happened in yesterday's game. What do you think? What do you think about that?
Okay, let's go. It was so fun game. It was really, really fun game.
And I'll keep an eye on the position. And as soon as Hikaru makes a move, we'll interrupt our recap. So yesterday was, for some reason, I thought it was an Italian too. It wasn't. It was Jorge Lopez. But the structures are so similar that it's easy to confuse them. And the opening went great for Levon. Queen d7. Hikaru going for this very modern setup with knight c3 rather than pawn c3, and trying out this knight h2, knight g4 idea. But Ketty, this one kind of backfired for Hikaru. I mean, this didn't lead anywhere particularly good. King h8 was impressive.
King h8 was very impressive, as it was for sure home preparation for Levon, and it was with a plan, and the plan is so powerful that white had to make his next move according to black's plan. And it's not that white started the first moves and white should continue the flow, but somehow Aronian switched the tables, and he said like, I'm playing and you have to play against me. And then Hikaru had to find all these moves, queen g4 to pin the knight, and also we have seen some knight maneuvering to push the pawn on c4 to control d4's central square, right?
Yeah, I mean, and the plan to which you refer is, of course, to play f5. And Aronian wants to go g6, drop the bishop back, push the f-pawn, rip open the king side, and then exploit the fact that he's got this monster bishop on the long diagonal that's going to open up if the e4 pawn disappears. But Hikaru, doing everything he can to distract Levon. He goes a4, then he goes knight back to e2, knight d5 here. This is a very impressive idea by Levon. Levon seeing that you can actually sack the pawn on b4 and then you can sack another pawn. But as a result, this is just a let me look at this position. Knight on d4, rook coming to f5. Ooh, all of it is very unpleasant. The queen on g4 is sort of stranded there. And Hikaru,
you don't even have an extra pawn there, Dani. Black is just taking that pawn.
He's taking that pawn back. Yeah. Well, white will have the extra pawn on b4, but it's not felt. I mean, it's useless. So knight e2 was a good sense of danger by Hikaru, who goes c3 to defend the d4 square. Here's that g6 move, and here the position transforms. Hikaru goes bishop d5, Levon accepts the trade and goes knight c5. Now the danger is coming from a different source. This e5, e4 move is going to come immediately, and it's going to cause a lot of problems. We thought about queen c4 here.
Daniel, there was one computer line, remember, which was really, really impressive. Instead of taking on d5, I think h5 was the intermediate move, which was forcing this queen to go on f3 or g3, and all these lines goes knight c5 now with all the pleasant for black, as e4 will be with a threat.
Yeah, it's basically unstoppable actually here. So we thought this might have been more precise than what Levon did, but Levon played fine. And bishop h6 is a calculated pawn sacrifice, but not because Hikaru likes this position, because he dislikes this position. Knight takes d3, counterattacking the rook. There were some nice lines here that we were considering. And this was very well calculated by Levon, but Hikaru ending up taking and repositioning his queen on c4. This was Hikaru's idea. He's basically saying, okay, I've got this long-term pressure on Levon's weaknesses, and the position is closed, which generally benefits the knight over the bishop. Although, if you think about it, the knight on e2 doesn't really have any prospect. It's completely restricted at the moment by the pawn on e5. Queen a8 was a very nice move, guarding the pawn on a6, but also pressuring the d5 pawn simultaneously. The point is, if queen takes c7, queen takes d5, and black breaks free. But this is where things started going wrong for Lev. And he missed several opportunities, some of them easier, some of them harder, to really extend his advantage. We thought that a5 here was a good bet, but this is understandable. Why he didn't play this is totally understandable. Ketty, the huge moment to me, and the surprising moment was here. Once Hikaru goes a5 himself, this was the huge opportunity for Levon to prepare c6, and he missed it.
Yeah, there was just a brilliant idea here to play rook c8, which looks a little bit passive, but that's for a moment, as black's next move is to play c6 to open up this rook on the c file, also attack the pawn on a5, and just to have very active position, because as we have seen, the final moves of black allowed white to be very active. Look at these pieces on the fourth rank, and pawn also on a5, getting all this space advantage. And Tanya, I think even before h5, rook c8 was always there for black, right?
Yes, rook c8 was possible here as well, but this was the last opportunity for Levon to go rook c8. And I mean, this is the moment where I think he deserves some criticism, because he's got 35 minutes. Hikaru has 11. And on queen a7, he spent less than a minute. Well, I guess more than a minute given the increment, but he spent about a minute and a half on this very committal move, queen a7. Levon had to realize that, one of black's main ideas is to prepare c6, especially because Hikaru now has a pawn on a5. And I think if he had played rook c8, he would have had excellent winning chances. I'm sure that people have analyzed this with a stronger engine. And, maybe I'm not suggesting that this is a winning position for black. Please make no mistake. But, I am suggesting that white is in a lot of danger here. And I didn't see a clear move for Hikaru. The engine suggests g4, but guess what? That's not an easy move to make. And after takes, the point is that c6 doesn't work. It blunders the pawn, but black can first play bishop b7, and now he's ready to play c6. And this would require Hikaru to greatly weaken his king. So black would have had excellent winning chances here. Instead, Levon missing the opportunity, going queen a7. And quite frankly, this is a pointless move. I mean, yeah, the queen aims at the king, but what, is Levon going to really win the f2 pawn? No, right? The queen doesn't have any prospects on this diagonal. This was bad, and Hikaru improves his position, saying, thank you for the opportunity. Yeah, Levon goes f5, he pushes the knight away, but, where to from here? Now you can never play c6. Now white has complete control over that square. And after the rook trade, white also has the possibility of creating a passer Ketty. And this is where Levon was the one who had to defend very accurately.
Yeah, and that's the moment when Hikaru felt that he was the one who was pushing here. And he found this very nice idea to play knight on b3 now, threatening queen d4 trade. And we're talking about this, that all the queen trade would be just winning for white without any chance for that bishop. As the pawns on the queen side are advanced, and the bishop has not squares to catch that pawn.
Yeah, and just showing one of the sample lines here, b5 breakthrough is totally devastating, because the bishop can never reach d4 due to the knight. So this is a huge headache for black. He has to worry about the queen trade. So Levon going bishop f6, of course, to stop white from getting a piece onto the d4 square. Now king g2, classic Hikaru, such a good move. And what this is prophylaxis. Levon has this idea of going e3, right? And the point is that after e3, if you take on e3, the queen swoops in with a check. Hikaru making sure that anytime the queen lands on e3, it won't be a check. So white will have time either to take on c7 or in some cases to take on a6. And Levon doing his best, goes h4, Hikaru taking that pawn, again exploiting the fact that the bishop can never leave f6 because of the queen trade. And this is great. Hikaru uses his pawns as a battering ram. Boom, h5, shattering black's own kingside pawn structure. Now Levon has more weaknesses that he has to worry about. And in comes the pawn, b5. And here was Levon who had to make a very, very impressive defense in order to save the game. Hikaru actually declined to draw right around this moment, which is a gutsy decision, but a very good decision because black is now firmly on the defensive. And Keddy, definitely a very impressive job by Levon to reorient himself because he had been better for most of the game. And he realizes how much danger he's in. He took his time and he put together a very impressive series of defensive moves.
Yeah, starting from e3 to expose the king side and then queen b8. That move is simply brilliant and it attacks the pawn on b5. It also brings the queen on g8. And what has to be really careful. And this position until the end, it was not the one side game. Like both sides could make a mistake and both sides could win a game. So they had to play really accurate moves at this point.
Yeah, and Hess and I were discussing this. E2 check was this is one of the most impressive things is to give. It's always incredibly hard to give up your strongest piece or your strongest pawn. It looks like black's only hope is this e3 pawn, and yet Levon gives it away. Not the only draw, but definitely the most accurate. But Levon understands that the e3 pawn is actually a detriment rather than a strength because it prevents the queen from infiltrating via a7. And the moment the queen infiltrates, perpetual check is going to be inevitable. Even in some cases, if white makes a second queen, sometimes that won't help. In fact, that's exactly what happened. Queen a7, Hikaru pushes, and in comes the queen, queen g1. Not being afraid of taking the pawn with check. King G. Levon is a big fan of giving pawns away with check. He did that against Keimer. He does that again here. And here, of course, you can play a7, and here there's going to be an immediate perpetual. Hikaru, until the very end, was trying to keep the game going. Knight d2, using the knight as a shield against checks, right? Queen h2 check, king d1, and the king zigzags its way to c2. But another impressive idea, queen takes f4, and Keddy cold-blooded, bishop g5. Levon, it's never easy to play when your opponent is about to promote to a second queen. And yet, Levon does exactly that.
Yeah, very precise way how black played here, although not so easy to handle this situation when the opponent has pawn on a7 and it's about to be queen. But now after queen a5, black pushed b4, black cutting the queen from this file diagonal. Now only move is to play queen a2 to guard his knight, otherwise it will be a checkmate. And queen a2 comes, then b3 with also another tempo. Then queen has to go back on a5, and now black found the move that the game cannot go further. It's just some draw as black is repeating this queen g1 and queen e3 checks.
Yeah, queen e3 is a great move. It prepares queen g1. Hikaru has nothing better than to make a second queen. I mean, not that that's a bad thing. And now the queen goes back and forth, and you can't escape the checks. King f1 merely asks for trouble because if you go to g1, that would end in tragedy. So Hikaru finally acquiescing to the draw, and a very justified result. And this just shows you that neither of these players is here by accident. I think if there's one thing that the game showed, it is exactly that these players are here because they have been superior to everybody else this tournament. They have been the most resilient. They have been the most creative, and they have been the most accurate. And for Levon, really, as I said, only one moment where he can be substantively criticized, where you can say that he shouldn't have done what he did. And that was queen coming to a7 on move 30, not on move 42. That was good. This is the big moment where he goes queen a7. And it just shows you that at this level, one single move, you play one move that looks natural, but isn't the best. and Hikaru doesn't give you a second chance. That's just the nature of playing Hikaru Nakamura and playing at this level in general. In the meantime, Hikaru has finally made a decision, and it's not d5. It's queen c7.
And you have d4 right away. I think Aronian just was like, ooh, thanks God he didn't play d5.
I can guarantee you Levon was hoping against d5, and as evidenced by the speed with which he played d4.
Oh, he played right away. He played right away.
I am surprised because Hikaru has to be careful not to slip into, Yesipenko mode, where he gives all of these concessions away in the center and ends up just having a nasty passive position. Mm. I wonder if he will take on d4 or not. This is a big moment. Ooh, and the engine suggesting a very interesting idea here. So queen takes d4 is not great, although possible, but you can also take on d4 with a knight. And the idea here, Ketty, there's a very cute move. Queen b1. Look at that move.
Right.
And basically the idea is to aim at the g6 pawn. And there's a repetition of moves, knight d2, queen d1, knight d4. Watch this happen. But the point is that if black goes d5, then you're able to go f3. And once the knight moves away, if you go knight d2 now, then queen d1 is just good for white. But if you go away, then I take on g6 twice, and white has a very, very active position. Mm-hmm. So possible. And if Hikaru takes, I really wonder what Levon is going to take with. Watch that repetition happen. That would be pretty funny.
Yeah, it's a funny repetition. Yeah, it's a funny repetition. And, like if black takes now on d4 and white takes on d4, we might really see that because all these moves are so natural. d5 seems also very natural. Knight d4 seems very natural. And queen b1 looks really fancy to bring that. We might have that one, Dania.
We also might have knight f4. I think Hikaru has shown a propensity this tournament to sort of, to keep the tension. He allows d4 and then he just sort of continues improving his position. The issue with this strategy is that white has a million ways to improve. Queen d2. Okay, white should probably throw in the move b4 and then rook a d1. And if black falls asleep, eventually something is going to happen and it's not going to be good for black. So Hikaru might once again take, 15, 20 minutes on this decision because it's another very, very big decision. Do you take on d4 or do you keep the tension?
Right.
So I don't know. All right, well, buckle in for another 15 minutes.
Another 15 minutes and that way of draw.
Right. The thing is, if Hikaru takes another 15, 20 minutes, he doesn't have an hour 25. He definitely has less than that. I think he probably has around an hour at this point, but we will try to get confirmation on his exact timestamp. If you get below 45 minutes, that's when I start to get concerned. Yeah, good moment to make some tea, buckle in, strap yourself in, because this game might end in a draw quickly, but this is the calm before the storm. This is the last chance to, last water fountain.
I mean, maybe Hikaru found that funny way to make a draw, and he went queen c7 because of this, and he just don't want to play d5 and to complicate the position with black pieces, and he just wants to get this in the playoffs. You never know.
Right. Yeah, no, it's possible. And Hikaru took on d4 pretty quickly. He's got 57 minutes. I'm surprised that he didn't think for longer, but I'm not negatively surprised. I kind of like it. And now Levon with a big decision. Queen takes d4 and knight takes. He's not going to take with the pawn. He takes with the queen. So doesn't even think about it. He takes with the queen. And that's what he decides. Okay.
Here, if black goes with c5, hoping to get a e4 pawn, this will be a really bad idea because queen can come on d1, and after knight takes on e4, there's knight d5, attacking the queen and taking on e4. That's losing for black. So black should not be very greedy in this position to take on e4. But Dania, there is a one line, like after c5 and queen goes back on d1, black can play bishop d7, bishop c6. I do have this weakness on d6, but I'm handling it. You also have a weakness on e4, and then I'm going to attack that weakness.
Yeah, this almost reminds me of the Nairo, for black sometimes plays e5 to weaken the d5 square, but then puts a bishop on e6. I actually don't dislike that idea. I think this is a very interesting way to play, where, yeah, optically, it looks like black is much worse. He's got this weak pawn on d6, but yeah, white's e4 pawn looks like less of a weakness, but that's an illusion. It's still a very big weakness. So I would contemplate also the move queen d2 here. That sets a nice trap. Here black can say, oh, I can take on e4 now because the queen is hanging. Well, no, you can't, because of knight d5 anyway. And if knight takes d2, you just lose the rook and then you lose the queen. So this is a disaster. So c5 is the first option. There are other options, though, and one of them is a low-key move. You can play bishop e6. You can play bishop e6. And this bishop controls the c4 square, which is quite important because knight c4 is one of white's main ideas, main ways to attack d6. And again, rook a d1 should be taken with a grain of salt because a5 is now hanging after rook a d8. If white nonchalantly plays b4, Caddy, after something like knight e5, I don't think black is in any kind of trouble here. All of his pieces are in the center. If Levon tries to refrain from the trade, you're in big trouble after c5. The queen is almost trapped here.
Yeah, this pawn structure might look a little bit passive for black, but for Sicilian players, it's quite comfortable to have this kind of structure, because you know the moment you have to push c5 or d5, or even you just have these pawns on the 6th rank, but you have this e5 square for your knight and all your pieces are well developed, it's actually okay to play that position, and it's nothing bad about having not enough space as much as right. White has.
Yeah, it's more about how solidly your pieces are placed, and of course the possibility of black pushing the pawn to d5 is not out of the question either in some positions. So lots of possibilities here, and Hikaru goes c5. Yeah,
there we go.
He decides on your idea, Ketty. And now let's see if Levon plays quickly or not, because I would spend a lot of time. Even queen d3 here can be considered. This is a funny looking move, but at least you have some sort of a battery here. And still, I think Hikaru should go bishop d7, because again, knight takes e4, knight d5, rook takes e4, still knight d5. This is an instructive line. Now here it looks like black is fine, takes, but it's important not to miss the forest for the trees, because here white still goes rook e8 check. Yeah. Queen takes d5, and just look at the level of domination that white has. And in the event of bishop e6, the simplest is actually just rook takes e6.
It feels so wrong, this position, Dania. It's just wrong here for black.
This is game over. So definitely not going to happen if Levon goes queen d3. And we had a question in the chat, like, why is Hikaru, for example, thinking on the move c5? Didn't he anticipate queen takes d4? And the answer to that question is yes, of course he did. And usually the way that these top players think about this is Hikaru definitely saw the possibility of c5 beforehand. But sometimes when an actual position is reached, you literally see it better, right? You have a new perspective on the position. And so it's not a wise idea to just put your head down and always go for the line that you had planned. What these players often do is they sort of reassess. They say, let me look at this position again now that we've actually reached it, and let me properly consider the alternatives as well. And it's also possible that Hikaru went into this position without having decided for a fact what he was going to play. It's possible that he thought to himself, can't talk. Bishop e6 is possible. c5 is possible. If we get this position, I'm just going to cross that bridge when I get there. I think it's a misconception that these players always know what they're going to do next. Yeah, sometimes they're just aware that they have a couple of options, and they don't decide until the position is reached.
Yeah, they feel that's the right position. They're not losing there. They're having the chances and the options there. And the moment that comes, they're taking the time, because one of the main mistake of the chess players is that when we calculated long lines, we're then going straight forward to that direction, and we're not considering any other options, which might be even better and which might be even winning. But very often that happens, that you see some line, you calculated that, in the end you liked it, and you're just going right there. And the players who have the skills to stop themselves and just look after each move, actually they win a big time, because the position changes, and you have different situation, different pawn structure, or the piece structure, and there can be some additional ideas. So even after c5 and queen moves away, I'm sure Hikaru will take some time, and he will then move his bishop or whatever, pawn or knight. So this is very important to pause before you make a move. Right.
I think that's great insight, Ketty. And just to reiterate, the fact that a player thinks doesn't automatically mean that they didn't see the opponent's previous move, or that they didn't have something planned, right? That's the thing that you don't want to necessarily assume. And this is a great example. Levon, I'm sure, saw c5, but he thought to himself, okay, I have queen d2, I have queen d1. Now that the position has been reached, I'm going to think more seriously and in a more purposeful manner about where I want to put my queen. And that's the next decision that we are going to await. And as we await it, Ketty, I think this is a perfect time to take another break.
Yes.
Well, we'll be right back. Title Tuesday is now 2 weekly tournaments with triple the prizes, totaling over 250K a year. Tune in each week at 8 a.m. and 2 p.m. Pacific to see your favorite title players battle it out right here at chess.com. That's 8 a.m. Pacific for the first tournament and 2 p.m. for the second, both of them on Tuesday. Double the fun and double the competition, double the Title Tuesday. So mark your calendars.
That's obviously good news for everyone, as
Yes.
Title Tuesday is one of my favorite tournaments. We had really, really decent prices, and now we have even more prices. But Dania, we have so interesting position as the finals of the Grand Prix. And Hikaru here goes all the way with this bishop to g4. He's not going to play bishop d7 and bishop c6, but he goes to attack f3 knight. And you know, white takes that bishop, then black takes the bishop, and black has 2 knights coming on e5.
Yeah, I mean, I'll be honest, this move came as a big surprise to me, but I don't think it's bad. In fact, I think it's just as good as bishop. We were expecting bishop d7, bishop c6. But the point of this move, apart from the fact that it, we'll talk about this trade, but when you remove the knight on e3 from the board, and white doesn't have to take, but black is threatening to take on f3, of course. The problem is that white has nothing with which to exploit this weak square. If you think about a weak square, yes, a weak square is important in and of itself, but if it cannot be exploited, if you can't put anything on that square, then it's not as big of a problem, right? And white can't really get the f3 knight to d5. It's very hard to move a knight 2 spaces diagonally. I mean, it's like at least 4 moves.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
White can put a queen there, but black is easily going to chase that queen away. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, black wants to trade one pair of knights and then to leave himself a knight versus light square bishop. And this bishop can be really good, or this bishop can be horrible. Just imagine the knight goes on e5 against this bishop. And if white tries to activate the bishop from b3 to d5, then black can push c4 right away and stop bishop there. And black will have a really, really good position with the active knight on e5.
Yeah, and the other thing that complicates the activation of the bishop is that if you play bishop b3, black can go back to f6 and hit the e4 pawn. This is still this didn't go anywhere. This is still a weakness for white, and it's not easy to defend it, right? It's just not easy to defend this pawn. If you go queen d3, you walk into knight f4. If you go into queen c2, well, this just looks terrible, and it also walks into c4, which you mentioned. If you go bishop d5, you can do that, but now black has the option of trading anytime he wants, and Hikaru also has the easy plan of doubling rooks on the e file. Black is better in this position, actually. So if Levon takes, I honestly think that if I had to choose a side, I would take black. Now, no question that white is not worse here if he's careful. But the fact is white has to be precise here. And I think one option for Levon is actually to try to get this knight to d5. And there's this move queen d1. The idea is that if black reroutes to e5, white steps back to d2 and ultimately tries to get the knight via f1 toward e3. And even if he forces the black knight to sit on e7, sending sentinel over the square, that's still kind of a win for white from a positional standpoint, because at least you've gotten one of black's pieces to get tied down. So that's an option, but Levon is taking his time here. He's not, I don't really see a viable alternative though to knight h2. I mean, what else does white do here? Queen
no, after bishop g4, I think knight takes g4 is white's only option. Bishop d1, impossible. Knight e4 comes with a threat, and knight e5 is not that strong threat anymore. Queen d1, just imagine white goes on under this pin, knight comes on e5, and anyway, there will be white has to take this bishop on g4. So to me, this knight g4 here seems to be pretty forced move for white.
Maybe there was a draw for.
That's a good question. After bishop g4, right?
Maybe. I mean, and honestly, I think that white is not better here. I would probably accept a draw here with white. I mean, I don't generally like to accept draws, but I feel like this is such a solid position for black. No targets. D6 is extremely easy to defend. just move the rook to d8, and this pawn will survive an earthquake. I mean, maybe he's considering queen d1. That's him. Now the bishop can drop back to h5, and you've got another huge headache to deal with, which is this pin. And black threatens knight h4, knight e5. So I don't really see this happening. And he's taken.
Oh, it's taken.
Yeah, no, maybe. I don't know if there was a draw for. Maybe there was, maybe there wasn't.
Honestly, if there was a draw for Levon, would take it, because let's once again talk about this position. Danny, there are some tactical motives where knight is on g4 and he's on h2 and the queen is on this diagonal. Very often we have seen moves like d5, knight h4, threatening checkmate. Right now, white is safe from these threats, but how about to get the rook on d8 and threaten to push this pawn? And that's very important pawn, as the pawn, white's pawn on a5 is pushed all the way there. Rook d1 doesn't come that easy for white, so seems like really comfortable for black. So here we have queen d1 move.
He's played queen d1, and I think that's a lovely move. In fact, I think it's the only way for white to even play for anything. I think if you hadn't done that, no question that black would have been, more than fine. Now, actually, the engine does start to assign a very, very small edge to white. And I think the reason why is because of this very nasty idea of maneuvering this knight all the way to d5. Originally, I thought that it was completely unrealistic. I didn't even see a way to get the knight there. But now that I look at this for longer, the position is not that sharp. So there is more time for white to do this kind of stuff. And here's another issue. In some of these positions, black would have loved to get the queen up to c6, just pressure the e4 pawn. But you can almost never do that because of bishop a4. So this is not without its positional risks. I think Hikaru might play rook a d8 here. And then we'll see knight d2. Hikaru will move his knight back, I guess, and knight f1, and then maybe f3. And there's still a little bit left to play for. I mean, maybe Hikaru can go d5 and solve all of his problems, but this is interesting.
Tanya, how about to play right now knight from g4 to e5? Obviously, white wants to continue this maneuvering knight to knight f1, right? Here, knight f4.
Okay, I'll go knight f1.
I want to jump on d3, knight f1, and now c4. I want anyway to get on d3.
I think that's a great idea, actually. I think that's a great idea because now white can't stop knight d3. I mean, I basically have to just continue with knight e3, and then you go knight d3. Then probably takes knight d5 as a possibility, but you can just move your queen to c5. And with such a knight, I don't think black can possibly be worse. Wow, the engine is indicating a really cool idea. Rook takes e4 in this position.
Oof,
now look at this line. Rook takes e4, knight takes f2. The point is that knight takes e4 is going to come seemingly inevitably, and black is going to be 2 pawns up. But white has a great resource, rook takes c4. And the point is that if you take, then I take your knight on f2 and I'm up a piece. But here black can repeat moves. Knight h3 check, king h1. Again, if you take the rook, you give up the knight. So you just have to keep repeating. That would be a very, very cool way for the game to end.
Yeah, I like that line.
Yeah, your idea is very, very good. So I think either knight e5 or knight f6 are the two main candidate moves. Even d5 here is not out of the question. My idea was e takes d5, and you called it, Kat. It takes, and now knight h4 actually wins for black. This is already winning for black because you simply have no way to stop the queen from coming into h2. And obviously, if you take the knight, then queen takes h2, queen takes h4, and there's a huge attack. The issue is that after d5, white is under no obligation to take, and white can throw in h3. And once the position opens up, the bishop is the one that benefits. So I don't think we're going to see d5, but it's a move to consider.
Yeah, that's fancy. I'm doing a lot of daily puzzles and puzzles in general.
Yeah, that was good tactical vision by you. Very good tactical vision.
I have seen them a lot, and can't help myself to look for these moves. But I'm sure if Hikaru has that chance, he will go for sure. knight h4 and this kind of kingside attack.
Yeah, he probably saw that like 5 moves ago, even before he had a knight on g4. So
oh yeah, he saw that.
he sees this kind of stuff in a hyperbolic game.
True.
Okay, so
can Black also start here to push c4 to additionally bring some like queen c5 idea? But yeah, this allows white to get knight on d4, then on f5, right?
Yep.
So that's
this allows white to streamline the improvement of the knight. So yeah, you would first, if you're going for this idea, I agree with you. I think you would start with knight e5 to force knight d2, and then you would go c4. Or you could start with knight f4 here. Actually, this is how you proposed it. Yeah, no, knight f4, and then only if the knight moves, then you go c4 at exactly the right moment.
Yeah, because now there's knight d3 with a threat of b2 pawn is also hanging.
Good time to.
What is the time situation? We see 46 minutes for Hikaru and a little bit more than 1 hour for Aronian.
Yeah, Levon, as usual, with plenty of time. And Hikaru taking a little bit longer as he usually does, but not getting himself into acute time pressure. A lot of important decisions here in a row.
Right. And I kind of feel that it's a completely different position and the situation from yesterday's game. In yesterday, Hikaru was really struggling to find the most precise way to just equalize the position. But now he's
got
not
options.
the one he has to. Yeah, he has options, and it's not really forced position.
Right. I mean, white has option. Black has a menu.
Can he start with knight f4 too, Dania?
The issue with this move, I think, is that it again allows the white knight to access f5, and knight h4 opens up the attack on the g4 knight. It has to go back, and then you go knight f5. So I think this is less desirable than.
Yeah, and now d5. We were talking about this to you, that allows white's bishop to be more open.
Yeah, generally the d5 pawn break should only be played by black if he's, let's say, has a rook on d8, or he has the machinery to handle the opening of the center, which he doesn't here. So Hikaru, yeah, taking a while, deciding between knight e5, knight f6, rook a d8, everything. I think everything is in the general ballpark of equality, but you'll probably make a decision within the next 5 minutes. I don't really see the point in getting yourself into time pressure here. Although I think Hikaru would be able to handle this position in time pressure. It's a pretty simple position. And when I say that, what do I mean? I mean, the ideas are quite obvious for both sides. There isn't this tension because the center has largely opened up. The best spots for the pieces are largely obvious. Whoa.
What?
D5.
D5?
What a committal move. Jeez.
Wow. That's something that we really did not consider here, and it's in the other side of the board, Dania. The things are happening on the king side and the center, and here black moves the pawn on the queen side.
Dang. Well, the reason I didn't consider this is because it allows en passant. But I suppose that Hikaru essentially says, well, I'm getting my queen on an active square. And again, now black has this weakness on a6 to worry about. But I think Hikaru very specifically is aiming to optimize the activity of his pieces. And he's willing to compromise his pawn structure in order to do that. And Levon is going to take en passant, I would assume, pretty quickly.
Probably. Oh yeah, imagine if Levon keeps that a5 pawn there.
No, he's already taken. He's already taken. So queen takes b6 is coming. And then Levon will have to defend the b2 pawn, I would imagine. But anything but bishop b3. Bishop b3 loses. Or it doesn't lose, but it allows c4. Which, of course, is extremely unpleasant.
Yeah.
So rook
Thinking
b1, rook
getting
a2. I mean, the engine is quite skeptical of this idea, but I can understand what Hikaru is going for here. I mean, he's going for activity. You know, you can only go so wrong when you go for optimal piece activity. It's generally a pretty good approach to the position.
I love how this hype comes every time we have en passant. Chat gets hyped.
Right. Oh, chat loves en passant. Loves en passant. And peasant. As Hikaru says.
That's nice. That's nice to say.
Well, okay. I mean, also queen d2 here on this move. But I mean, queen d2 here is also a possibility because queen takes b2 gets the queen trapped, rook b1. The issue with queen d2 is that after knight e5, you're kind of running into knight c4 possibilities. Like this queen looks really good, but it's a little bit awkward. So another pretty big decision here for Levon. He has to decide whether and if so. Okay, already he makes a move, knight d2. Jeez.
Knight d2. So his idea is that if now black takes on b2, so the queen attacks the bishops, white can take the knight on g4 as queen comes on c2. Then there is intermediate move rook b1, very likely, or bishop a4, Tanya. That's two possibilities.
Yeah, I have to figure this out because rook b1, I think black can take on c3.
Yeah.
And the point is that you cannot, I mean, now all of your minors are hanging.
There's rook b3?
Yeah, and then queen d4. I attack f2.
Mm.
And now it's a problem because you
annoying.
Have to take the knight, and then white is also down 2 pawns here. What exactly is the one planning after?
There's bishop a4. Maybe that's
bishop a4. You mentioned this, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Bishop a4. Okay, so the rook is attacked. I have to move it. Yeah. Okay, let's say rook. Also, Ketty, this is not out of the realm of possibility, but okay, let's say I move the rook to e7. What now?
So now g4, you take g4, I take on d2, and c3 then is a weakness, so it's not good.
Yeah, knight c4 blunders the pawn, which is easy thing to blunder. I've blundered like this in Blitz a million times, like these lateral moves, forgetting about the f2 pawn. Very, very common.
Yeah, this is very nice resource here, queen c3 and queen d4 there. So this means that white black can take a b2 pawn.
Yeah, and you can see that the eval bar is not calling for an apocalypse here. It's saying zeros, but I'm not even sure exactly how white is supposed to where the compensation is to be found.
You know what? Instead of bishop a4, there's bishop b3 move.
Mm-hmm.
That's pretty looking move. And now in the same lines, if black gets really greedy and takes c3 pawn, let's say queen c3, queen goes on g4, and after queen d2, g6 knight is hanging.
Oh, queen takes g4, queen takes d2, oh my goodness, but it's not the end of the line, Kenny. This is amazing. So in this position, black has a phenomenal resource. You go c4. Okay, that looks dumb, right? Just bishop takes the pawn. But now you go d5. And after bishop d5, black can take that bishop with the queen and essentially make a draw. What an incredible item. Queen takes g7 is possible here. Another desperado. But when the smoke clears, at the end of the day, black is the one on the outside passer. And with such an a pawn and the rook behind it, black is never going to lose this game. Oh my goodness, what an incredible line.
All the other roads are leading to draw.
To Rome, yeah, which is also a draw.
Lines.
Yeah, but here there's rook c1, queen d4. And apparently here white is winning. But the engine is going nuts. No, it's not winning. Takes. It's the same exact thing. The rook on c1 doesn't actually help. You would love to take on c4 with a rook, with the idea of going rook c2. There's a small problem, though, which is that there's mate in 1. That rook on e1.
It's a bit problem.
You know, Levon would have loved for his rook to be back on f1 because it would have defended f2, and it would have never been a victim to these kinds of back rank ideas. So even this is possible. But I also think you can start with bishop a4 and then play bishop b3, and that doesn't really substantively change the evaluation. Hikaru's the kind of guy to take on B2. Hikaru does not shy away from these sorts of complications. And one of Hikaru's great strengths is that he doesn't trust anybody. He trusts himself, but you cannot pull a fast one on Hikaru. Like, he will call your bluff and he will make you prove it. And I think that Black should very much take on B2 here. I think the alternative is to play knight e5, but after something like rook a2, White can revert back to the idea of maneuvering the knight to d5. And I think there's no doubt that White is slightly better here. So let's see what he does. He's down to 40 minutes. Whoops. He's down to 40 minutes.
Yeah.
And by the way, if there's a draw, somebody in the chat was asking, we go into a tiebreaker. It's not an immediate Armageddon. First, there is a 2-game 15+2 match. Let's just quickly review the format. If that is drawn, if it goes 1-1, there's 2 blitz games, 3+2. And if that also goes 1-1, then and only then do we have an Armageddon game where White is 5 minutes, Black is 4 minutes, but a draw counts as a win for Black. Kenny, which side of the Armageddon do you usually prefer?
I've never had I have never had a chance to choose the side in practical life, in practical chess, but I think I would choose Black.
Mm-hmm.
I was only once very close to Armageddon. There was online chess, and then I could choose Black because all the games I won was by Black. I was winning by Black and I was losing by White the next game. I just needed one draw in any of those rapid or blitz game, and I could not make it. It was really strange. And then I was thinking, if the last blitz game goes to draw or to her favor, then I'm gonna choose Black, because obviously I was winning in the opening with Black. So there was only one time, but I don't know. It's like there is, for instance, Daniil Dubov and Jan Krzysztof Duda, who were very clearly saying that they would always choose white pieces because they believe that this is very important for them to choose white in the opening and get some advantage and have more time. But you can always argue that.
Yeah, I mean, if I had it my way, I think 5 versus 4 is a little insufficient of a handicap, given that, I mean, the fact that a draw is a win is like, that is just huge. And I think the Armageddon format in general is great. I think Armageddon's a very, very creative invention. It really helps resolve situations where, it prevents the match from dragging on forever, which nobody wants. But if I had it my way, I would do 5 versus 3. I think 5 versus 3 should be more of a standard because, again, there are players who choose white even when it's 5 versus 4. You mentioned Duda and Dubov. But I think the general consensus is that Black has the edge in an Armageddon game. I really feel that way. So we'll cross that bridge if we get there.
Chad wants to see blood. We want to see blood. Let's see where all this game goes. Dania, I would not be surprised if we have an Armageddon game because these two players, they're so even level and they're really high level, in fact, and they are both of them are having good tournaments. So
yeah, I don't know if there's going to be enough margin of victory for either player in the classical. I mean, I think this game could go either way. You could see all 3 results happening, but you always feel like a draw is the likeliest outcome because of how good their form is. And the big question here is, does Hikaru take the plunge? Does he take the leap of faith and take the pawn on b2? I think he will. I think he's already invested too much time into it, right? It's a sunk cost thing where you've already invested, 10, 15 minutes. And then to not play it is a very deflating sensation. So unless he sees something very concrete, and we know we have the privilege of consulting with the engine, so we know that there isn't anything concrete for White. But if Hikaru reaches the same opinion and reaches the same conclusion, I think he's taking on b2. He's not just going to trust Aronian here.
No, this is also a chant like you just don't allow your opponent to make any further complications because you're just swapping up all the queenside pawns, and you guarantee yourself at least a draw if you see all these lines. But there was crazy computer line, right? C4 D5, and you have to see it from here, which Hikaru very often does, and he sees these lines.
Right.
But still, it's not easy to make decision, right? To go.
No, but here's the thing. Okay, so how did that line go again? It was bishop b3, right?
Yeah, bishop b3. You can play bishop a4 first and then bishop b3, but you should know where do you need this black's rook to be.
And just a clarification, the reason just moving the knight isn't sufficient is because after rook e3, there is a massive threat of rook a2 trapping the queen. In fact, there's nothing black can do about it. Black is going to lose the queen. But there is the option of going knight 6 e5, and apparently
h3 now.
Yeah, h3, and now you sacrifice on f2. Then the other knight runs into d3, and you get this very interesting imbalanced position where black has 3 pawns for the 2 pieces. And yes, black has this gaping hole on d5. So I think white can put a bishop on d5 and then the knight on c4. But I think this is a very double-edged position, and I don't really think black should be that much worse with 3 whole pawns for the 2 pieces. So the reason I'm bringing this up is to suggest that it's not like Hikaru absolutely has to see this c4 idea, even if queen takes c3 is the cleanest draw. But this is something Hikaru is very much capable of seeing. We'll see. We'll see what decision he makes, but he's going to make one very soon, Ketty. He's down to 33 minutes. He's entering time trouble stage.
That's right. So there's
10 more minutes or so. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's true. And maybe this can be the reason why he would choose to go to queen b2. If he sees that the way how he can make a draw, I'm sure he will go there, because the time difference is huge here in this game, and the time can be a factor for him. For instance, black can play knight g4 to e5 to avoid knight c4 coming and to keep the game still going on. But white has 1 hour here and not bad position at all.
Right. 33 minutes now for Mr. Nakamura. He's down half an hour on the clock. And like you said, Ketty, queen takes b2 is a very forcing line. If he goes for it, he's going to be able to make at least a couple of moves quickly. And I think that's his logic here. He doesn't mind investing all the time here to make sure that he has it calculated out. But I think with every passing second, the likelihood that he takes on b2 increases exponentially. Right? He's not going to wait until he has 15 minutes and then not take, like I said earlier.
There's funny comment in the chat if Hikaru is having Grishka's costume. I think it's referring by the time. But let's be honest, he's using this time for a reason. This is a critical moment for him. And also the other moves was quite critical. It's not easy to change the pawn structure right away unless you know that that's the right way to go. And it takes some time to calculate all these lines.
In contrast to Grishuk, who is perfectly capable of spending, an hour on move 6 in a theoretical position and then saying, well, I was deciding what to play and I was thinking about the meaning of life. So I decided to take the time. But yeah, Hikaru he's got stuff to calculate here. He needs to make sure he doesn't lose his queen after queen takes b2.
Danny, if you have a chance to commentate, to work with Grishuk, would you
I did
talk? You did?
I did. I commentated the world championship with him in Russian.
Okay, and how did it go?
We did 5 or 6 rounds.
Him? Did you imitate him?
I was like too embarrassed. I was too embarrassed to do it, like to his face. But he was so fun to commentate with. He had so many great stories. Like Grishuk is one of those people who he's not overhyped. Like he is worth the hype. He lives up to it every time he does anything. It's like I could watch him brush his teeth and it would be like the most thug life thing ever. I put toothpaste on my toothbrush. Like it would be there would be no one I would rather watch like do mundane tasks than Grishuk. So in any case, but right now, as we watch Hikaru contemplate his move, this is a huge moment in the game. So nobody leave, because big decision coming up. Does Hikaru take on B2, or does something scare him off? And he just took on B2. He just took on B2.
He does this last time. No, it was Aronian who did that to us, Daniel. We wanted to take a break.
Immediately,
he didn't let us, and now Hikaru does the same, and here we have Queen B2.
I think we can still go on a break. I think that Aronian is going to take a while on his next move, because we already discussed the heck out of this position. We've discussed the heck out of this position. So, okay, now it's Aronian's turn to contemplate different ways of trying to punish Hikaru. We were thinking about bishop B3. So very tense position. Stuff is going to happen the next 5 moves. So we're going to take a short break, catch our breath, and when we come back, big next couple of moves. You're watching the FIDE Chess Grand Prix final. Don't go anywhere. We'll be back in just a very short few minutes.
We are back at the FIDE Grand Prix 2022. The finals just ended with a tie, 1-1, Dania. This game has been ended on our break. What a surprise! That's the biggest surprise.
I feel like every single thing in this match has happened during a break, but there's no way to predict this. I really looked very hard to see if there could be a repetition here. I didn't see it. I saw the possibility of Rook B1, but obviously there's this repetition, but Black wouldn't have had to take to play Queen A2. But the way Levon does it, he goes Knight C4 first. Okay, Queen takes C3. Now the Knight travels to B6, hits the Rook. Then it goes back to D5. And again, White's problem is that you can never really take the Knight because you lose the Bishop. But here the repetition works because Black's Queen has to stay attached to the Bishop, right? Which means it has to go to A2. And then it has to go back to B2, because if you go Queen C4, you walk into the incredibly nasty move Rook A4, and then you have to go back to B5 and you end up dropping the Knight. So Queen B2, and now the familiar repetition is more understandable. So I don't think this is a surprise to anybody. This was a hard-fought game. Not the most interesting game I've ever seen, but definitely not anything resembling just like a quick Grandmaster draw. I mean, there was a lot of life to the position, and good thinking by both players. Levon demonstrating interesting opening preparation, but ultimately it really was not enough to throw Hikaru off.
Yeah, we were in this direction, Danny. That it's interesting. They will play this until even maybe end game, but this can end in a draw because it's nothing really huge for both for any of this side, because they really played the accurate moves. And Daniel, this means that we're going to see tie breaks playoffs tomorrow.
We are working tomorrow as we have a look at the bracket here. It is indeed 1-1 in Nakamura Aronian. Once again, not a surprise to anybody as it boils down to tie breaks tomorrow, which of course will be at the same exact start time, 6 a.m. Pacific. I can't wait. The tie breaks are going to be so interesting because at some point, one of these players is going to go wrong. One of them is going to take a bigger risk. And the question is, who is it going to be? Now, I think that Hikaru will be very encouraged at the fact that we have a rapid playoff. But let's not forget that Levon is one of the strongest rapid players himself. Levon is an incredibly strong rapid player. So this is not going to be easy for either of them. But before we discuss...
Considering... Sorry to interrupt. Also, the way how Aronian plays at this tournament, he shows a good preparation. He shows that he's playing so fast. Actually, in the last few games, he has 1 hour, more than 1 hour.
Right, he's basically already playing rapid.
Yeah, he's already playing rapid. So tomorrow will be very epic, and we might even see all this going to the Armageddon stage.
Indeed, and that's going to be super exciting. But first, it is time for your Grand Prix final rapid recap, Game 2. And this was definitely an interesting game. There were a couple of moments of note. Ketty, I'll be completely honest. I was a little bit disappointed to see an Italian. I was hoping for something a little bit more unbalanced, but you can understand Levon's choice. I mean, he goes for what he's comfortable with. He goes for something reputable and solid, and ultimately no big surprises in the opening as they follow a very topical line with A4, which most people are playing nowadays.
And they had even played this line, particularly in their other game in 2018. So they were quite familiar of these plans. They played all this move rather fast. And there was just one moment when both players were fighting for the center. So maybe we can get in that point.
Yeah, Knight A3, a relatively modern move. Traditionally White puts the Knight on D2, but recently people have started to do this Knight A3, Knight C2, and the idea is to play Bishop E3 and to recapture with the Knight. And this Knight on E3 is well placed. It guards D5. It can jump into F5. Hikaru doing everything pretty normally, and things start to percolate around here. Levon plays A5, fixing the queenside pawn structure. Hikaru responds with C6, and this really signals his ambitions, right? He's saying, I'm not just going to wait for you to play D4. I am going to prepare D5 myself. And we start this kind of cat and mouse game. Levon drops the bishop back, and Ketty, you pointed out that D5 is possibly a little bit premature. because after taking, Levon can go d4, e4, and perhaps even drop the knight back to d2, followed by the move f3, cutting into black's pawn chain. And this isn't always as good as it looks. So Hikaru, after a pretty long think, decides to refrain from playing d5, and he never does end up playing d5.
No, he didn't play d5. Instead, he goes with h6, a little bit waiting move here. After bishop c2, now clearly white is the one who wants to fight for the center with d4. And in those lines, e4 pawn won't be hanging anymore. Black plays rook gate to keep the pressure on this file. And now at this stage, black went with a very interesting move, queen c7.
Yeah, the engine like d5 in this position, but Hikaru going for a very interesting approach. Levon pulls the trigger. Here's d4. After e takes d4, there was a possibility of taking with the knight, but Levon taking more straightforwardly with the queen. And I really liked the way Hikaru handled this creatively, but in a very positionally sound manner. c5 looks bad. Looks like it weakens the d5 square, the d6 pawn. And we were expecting him to follow up with bishop d7, bishop c6, but instead he chooses the move bishop g4, Ketty, forcing a trade and essentially going for a bad bishop versus good knight situation. Of course, this bishop is not necessarily bad. And Levon responding himself with a very nice move, preparing to maneuver this knight, hopefully at some point all the way until d5. Hikaru not wasting any time and counter-striking immediately.
Yes, here after queen d1, we were thinking how to avoid this knight maneuvering. Then there was a suggestion to play knight e5 and to keep the tension on the board, to bring another knight in the on f4 to push c4 and occupy d3 square. So we were really deep in these lines, and out of a sudden we saw the move b5 on the board, which allows white to take the pawn with en passant, but now the queen comes on the b file, and this is a very nice file for black to play.
Yeah, the engine actually thought that white is a little bit better after rook a2, defending the pawn, but Levon quite quickly embarked on knight d2. Now, it's unclear to me whether whether maybe he underestimated the possibility of queen takes b2, but he must have been aware of it. So Hikaru, after a pretty long think, very good call. He takes on b2, the only way to preserve the balance. He's definitely worse if he moves the knight. And the point here is that you can't really take the knight because of queen takes bishop, and white emerges a pawn down. So there were several possibilities for white, but all of them ultimately led to a draw. One of them was bishop b3, and one of the nicer lines that we saw was queen takes c3. This looks like it loses a piece, right, Ketty? But in this position, a beautiful resource to draw the game.
Yeah, and this is c4. Black attacks the bishop, forces white to take this pawn. White obviously takes this pawn, otherwise the queen on g6 is hanging. And now d5. And you know what? We can get into the rook endgame, where it seems quite calm position and not really hard to achieve a draw.
Yeah, this is a dead draw, and this was just one of many possible lines. But the thing is, black is not even obliged to take on c3, and there were alternatives there as well. And Levon decides to force a draw. Knight c4, queen takes c3. Now, the knight is hanging. He goes to b6. So Levon ultimately does manage to get his knight to d5. I guess in that way, his strategy ended up being successful. But the problem is that he's 2 pawns down, and he's still struggling with the placement of this bishop on c2 and a repetition of moves. Rook b1, queen a2, rook a1. Neither side is able to decline the repetition. Black must keep himself anchored to the bishop, and white must keep chasing the queen in order to try to get it away from the bishop. And so the game ends peacefully in 29 moves. Ketty, a combative game, an interesting game, well played by both sides. Really no major mistakes.
No major mistakes, and even this creates a very interesting situation for chess fans and the chess viewers, because after this draw, we are going to see playoffs in the rapid time control.
Indeed. And this was your FIDE Grand Prix final rapid recap for game 2. Yeah, so we are getting word that Hikaru is going to be white in the first rapid game tomorrow. But again, very important, they are playing 2 rapid games. Both are going to have both colors. Obviously, if that's drawn, then 2 more blitz games, 3+2. And if that ends up in 1-1, we will have an Armageddon, which is not out of the realm of possibility, Ketty. As we discussed, given how evenly matched these players are, I wouldn't really be all that surprised if we actually went to Armageddon.
I will not be surprised at all, because what we have seen so far, it's equal strength from both sides, and they have played a lot of games, 100 if not more games, and in many cases, as I can see, 67 times in rapid game that ended in a draw. So very likely we might see tomorrow's playoff go into the Armageddon.
Indeed, and the start time will be once again the same as today, the same as all days, 6 a.m. Pacific time, 9 a.m. Eastern. Well, Ketty, this was a pretty short day. We will get a little bit more time to rest, but we are working tomorrow. I'm super, super excited. There's a lot on the line, truly. There's implications for candidate spots on the line in these rapid games tomorrow. So the players better take their evenings, their early evenings to rest and to prepare. And I'm very excited to see what they're going to show tomorrow in the opening and what kind of form Levon and Hikaru are going to display in the rapid playoffs.
Absolutely, Diana. We cannot really complain for this rather early draw today, because tomorrow going to be even funnier day for us, for commentators and also for the viewers. But for those two players, this day will be very important, as it's going to be really the final day, and we're going to know the winner of the first leg of the FIDE Grand Prix.
Indeed, we will. And I will mention before we wrap up, Arena King starts in 50 minutes. Season 9 is underway with $40,000 prize pool. So make sure to tune in 50 minutes as we will have our weekly Arena King. So there will be more chess entertainment coming your way very, very soon. But for now, it is time for us to wrap up. Ketty, always a pleasure commentating with you. This was a lot of fun. And it was a short game, but it was a sweet game. And yeah, I'm not complaining. I'm going to take another short nap, prepare for tomorrow. And we would like to thank, of course, everybody in Twitch and on YouTube, the thousands of you rooting for your favorite player, and to Bick for yet another excellent broadcast. Ketty, time has come for us to wrap it up. The rapid is tomorrow. I will give you the final couple of thoughts.
Thank you, Dania. Absolutely a fun day today as well. The game was shorter, as we mentioned earlier, but very interesting and can be instructive for many of our viewers and the chess players as well. Big thanks to our viewers on YouTube and Twitch, and also big thanks to you for your commentary, and can't wait to see tomorrow the playoffs. So guys, tomorrow, same place, same time. Please join us, and we promise you that it will be a lot of fun.
Absolutely. We'll see you tomorrow. Thank you, everybody.
Christopher used puzzle score that he just threw up in a practice round. Let's bring that up.
Look at
Dude,
that.
just throwing down, putting up a casual 47.
Chill. I just got out of bed, sipped some water, 47. He got to 50, but that's 48. He can close the gap. 26 seconds left. He can't get another one wrong.
Oh my God. Dude, if you pulled off the comeback, you had to win by 2 heading in this last round. Oh,
52. I don't know what's about to happen. I have no idea what is about to happen. You can hold your breath for 10 seconds here.
Strike. Oh no, Christopher goes out with 2 strikes.
Oh wait,
but he got 2.
Oh my goodness.
Are we tied?
It's tied, right? That's the 2. That's +2. Men out here beating himself up. Let's get that on camera. That 52. Wow.
Oh my God, Minley was tapping his head. He's like, what's going on here?
46.
Okay.
Extending.
Oh, I'm nervous.
I am too. Like, I don't know what's gonna. 20 seconds.
Oh no,
this is down to the wire,
like
chat.
this. Oh, he gets but he misses it.
Oh my
Minley
goodness.
strikes out.
He's out of there.
Christopher Yu moves on.
Wow, Christopher Yu, what to do?
Gosh, bro.
Hard flex from a young fella. Wow.
Dude, this is the best mutual run we've had all day. 53 and 52.
Absolutely. 53, 52.
2 people at 53.
What on earth are they doing?
Oh
They're running up the check.
Gosh.
Hikaru's
got 52.
Oh my goodness.
Unbelievable.
Oh my God.
With more time,
And
he's
got
gonna beat him.
53.
He's got 53.
He's gonna beat him.
He beats Jeffrey.
Andrew has 52. No, Andrew has 52. Oh my God, Andrew has 52.
Oh my goodness, 53.
Oh my God.
52. Jeffrey
Where does
could
he take
lose. He got it.
73. He got it. He got it. The last run.
The last run?
53.
This is insane.
What?
Oh my lands, there's 20 seconds left. Can he get to 52 or 53?
Green.
He gets to 51.
Goodness.
He gets to 52. Jimis with the third strike.
What a show.
Here.
Sheesh.
53.
Woo.
Oh my
All
goodness,
green.
he's gonna go 54.
Big Ray.
Oh my
have
god,
a
he's
nice
gonna get
day.
55.
Wow. Put caps on my
he
name.
almost made 55. He gets a 10-point lead.
54.
And not a single strike. Jimis has 51 as well. What a great way to end a fantastic Puzzle Battle World Championship. Just look at this, 53-52.
That's how you end it.
Ray Robson is, for the third time in a row, the Puzzle Battle World Champion.